The stars were quiet, the way they always were at the edge of known space. Cold, distant, and silent. But on this particular night something changed. Something that no one in the Galactic Empire had ever seen before. Something that should not have existed at all. Admiral Vorn sat in his command chair aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion. He was a tall alien, with gray skin and 4 small black eyes that never missed anything. He had served the Galactic Empire for 60 years. He had won 32 battles. He had crushed rebellions on 7 planets. Nothing had ever scared him until tonight. "Admiral," said a young officer from across the bridge, his voice shaking just a little. "We are picking up a signal." Vorn did not look up from his data screen. "What kind of signal?" he said flatly. The young officer swallowed hard. "We don't know." "Sir," now Vorn looked up. "In 60 years, his crew had always known what kind of signal they were reading. Ion drives, warp signatures, subspace radio, distress beacons. There was always an answer, always. "Show me," Vorn said. The main screen at the front of the bridge flickered on. What it showed made every single person in that room go completely still. There was something moving through space. Something large. It was not moving the way ships moved. Ships left trails, energy signatures, heat. This thing left nothing. It moved through space the way a shadow moves across a wall. Silent, clean, and impossibly fast. "How fast is it moving?" Vorn asked. His science officer, a small alien named Grex, looked up from his panel with wide eyes. "Faster than anything we have in our records." "Admiral, faster than our fastest ship. Yes!" "Sir, by a factor of 9, Vorn stared at the screen. "A factor of 9. Their fastest warship could cross the galaxy in 40 days. Whatever this was, it could do the same trip in less than 5. "Send an identification request," Vorn ordered. The communications officer nodded and sent the signal. Standard galactic protocol, used by every species in the known universe. It said, "Who are you? Where are you from? And what is your purpose?" They waited. 1 minute passed. Then 2, then 5, no answer. "Send it again," Vorn said. They sent it again, and again, and again, nothing. The object just kept moving. Steady, calm, and completely silent. It was heading toward the center of the Empire, toward the capital planet. Vareth Prime word traveled fast within 20 minutes. Every senior commander in the region was on a secure channel. Within an hour, the Supreme War Council on Vareth Prime had been woken up from their sleep. Admiral Vorn was connected to a screen showing 12 of the most powerful faces in the Empire. General Maka, the head of the Imperial Army, spoke first. "What is it?" "We don't know," Vorn said. There was a pause. That answer was not acceptable. The Empire always knew. "Is it a weapon?" asked another general. "Unknown. Is it alive? Unknown. Can we stop it?" Vorn looked at his science officer, Grex, who shook his head slowly. "Unknown," Vorn said again. The room on the screen erupted. Everyone was talking at once, shouting, demanding answers that no one had. Then one voice cut through all the noise. Old, slow, and very calm, it belonged to Dr. Seath. The Empire's oldest living scientist, he was 140 years old. His skin was pale yellow and deeply wrinkled. His eyes were half closed, the way they always were when he was thinking very hard. "Admiral Vorn," he said quietly. The room fell silent because when Seath spoke, everyone listened. "Yes, Doctor," Vorn said. "Can you show me the energy reading from the ship's hull?" Vorn nodded to Grex, who transferred the data. Seath looked at it for a long moment. His 4 fingers tapped slowly on the desk in front of him. Tap, tap, tap. The whole room waited. Then Seath looked up, and for the first time in a very long time he looked afraid. "I have seen this energy signature before," he said softly. "In a report from 200 years ago, written by a survey team that visited a small, distant system called Sol." Every person in the room leaned forward just a little. "What species?" General Maka asked. Seath looked directly at the camera. He said only one word: "Humans." The silence that followed was strange. It was not the silence of fear, not yet. It was the silence of people trying to remember something half forgotten. Humans, most of the generals had heard of them. In the same way you hear about a small animal in a distant jungle, something unimportant, something far away. 200 years ago, humans had been discovered. They were living on a single planet, building machines out of metal and rock. They had no faster-than-light travel. They had no energy weapons. They barely had spaceflight. The Empire's survey team had looked at them the way a grown adult looks at a child playing with sticks. Interesting, but not important. The report had been filed and forgotten. General Maka laughed. It was a short, hard laugh. Humans, he said. Humans don't have this kind of technology, old man. They were primitives. They were primitives 200 years ago, Seath said quietly. Maka opened his mouth, then closed it again. 200 years. The thought moved slowly through the room like a cold wind. 200 years was a long time. In 200 years, the Empire itself had changed greatly. What could a species do in 200 years if they worked very, very hard? What could they build if no one was watching? It doesn't matter who they are, said another general. A wide-shouldered alien named Drax. One ship cannot threaten the Empire. Send a fleet, stop it, and bring it in for examination. Several others nodded. That was the logical response. That was the Imperial response. You see something unknown. You stop it, you take it, you study it. The Empire had done this 100 times before, Admiral Vorn, General Drax said. How many warships do you have in the region? 42. Sir, send them all. Vorn gave the order. 42 of the Empire's finest warships turned and moved toward the unknown object. Their weapons were charged, their shields were at full power. These were not small ships. Each one was longer than a city. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Together, 42 of them could crack a planet in half. Vorn watched on his screen as his fleet moved into position, forming a wide circle around the unknown ship. It still hadn't slowed down. It still hadn't responded to any signals. It just kept moving, steady and calm, like something that had no reason to be afraid. All ships are in position, Admiral, said the fleet coordinator. Order them to stop the target, Vorn said. The message was broadcast to the unknown ship on every possible channel. You are surrounded by Imperial forces. Stop immediately or we will open fire. They waited 10 seconds. 20, 30, the unknown ship slowed. Just a little. Vorn sat up straighter. It hurt us, someone said. Then the ship stopped completely. It just hung there in space, surrounded by 42 Imperial warships. Still silent, still sending no signals, but it had stopped. Good, General Drax said from the screen, looking satisfied. Now bring it in. The fleet began to move closer. Slowly, carefully, Vorn watched the screen with all 4 of his eyes. Something felt wrong. He had been in enough battles to know when something was wrong. He couldn't explain it, it was just a feeling. The kind of feeling that had saved his life many times. Hold position, he said quietly. Admiral, Drax said sharply. I said bring it in. Something is wrong, Vorn said. You are imagining things, Drax said. It's one ship and we have 42. Move forward. Vorn stared at the unknown ship on his screen. It was strange looking, very different from anything the Empire built. The hull was dark, almost black, but it seemed to absorb the light around it rather than reflect it. Its shape was sharp and angular, like a weapon designed to cut through space itself. And there were markings on the hull, symbols painted in white. Grex zoomed in on them, letters, not Imperial letters. Not any alien writing Vorn had ever seen. Simple, straight lines forming words. Can we translate that? Vorn asked. Grex worked quietly for a moment. It's an old Earth language, sir, Grex said slowly. I have a partial database from the original survey. What does it say? Grex read it out loud. Carefully, USS Reckoning, USS Reckoning. Vorn didn't know what those letters meant. But the word at the end, reckoning, that was translatable. It meant the moment when past actions must be answered for. The feeling of wrongness in Vorn's chest got much stronger. Hold position, he said again, louder this time. Admiral Vorn? Drax's voice was sharp and angry now. I am giving you a direct order. Move your fleet forward and capture that vessel. Now Vorn closed his eyes for just 1 second. Then he opened them and gave the order. The fleet moved forward. They got within 300 kilometers of the human ship. Then something happened. Every screen on every Imperial ship went dark for exactly 2 seconds. Then they came back on. But now there was something new on every screen. A face, a human face. Vorn had never seen a human in person. He had only seen the old drawings from the survey report 200 years ago. This human was male, he could tell that much. He looked middle-aged with short dark hair and a face that had clearly seen hard things. He was wearing a dark uniform, very simple, no decorations, no medals. Just a small symbol on his chest that Vorn didn't recognize. The human looked directly at the camera. His eyes were dark brown. His face was completely calm, not nervous. Not excited, not angry, just calm. The way someone looks when they have been waiting for something for a very long time, and the wait is finally over. He said nothing for a moment, he just looked at every single Imperial ship around him, all 42 of them one by one, like he was counting them, or like he found them unimpressive. Then he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "My name is Commander Eli Cole," he said. "I am speaking on behalf of the United Human Commonwealth. We have traveled a long way to be here today." He paused. "We have some things we need to discuss." Nobody on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion said a single word. Not one person moved, even General Drax, who had been angry and impatient 5 minutes ago, was completely silent. They all just stared at this human on their screens. This one human in one ship surrounded by 42 warships, talking calmly like he was here for a meeting. Then Commander Cole did something unexpected. He looked directly at the camera, almost like he knew exactly which screen Vorn was watching from, and he said very quietly, "Before we talk, Admiral, I want you to check something. Check your long-range sensors. Look behind my ship." Vorn looked at Grex. Grex's fingers were already moving. The long-range sensors were slow. They took a moment to load. The screen filled with data. Grex stared at it. His face changed. The color drained out of it completely. He turned to Vorn, and Vorn had never, in 60 years, seen his science officer look like that, Admiral. Grex whispered, "There is something behind the human ship." "How far back?" Vorn said. 2 light minutes. What is it?" Grex swallowed. "Ships, sir." "How many?" Grex looked at his screen again. Then he looked back at Vorn. "I am still counting," he said on the screen. Commander Cole was still watching them, still calm, still patient. And for the first time in 60 years, Admiral Vorn felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear, real fear. The kind that starts in your chest and moves slowly through your whole body. The kind that whispers to you, "You are not the most powerful thing in this room anymore." The long-range sensors were still counting. Grex's fingers moved fast across his panel. His eyes were wide, his breathing was not steady anymore. Admiral Vorn stood up from his chair, something he had not done in the middle of a situation in many years. He walked to Grex's station and looked at the screen himself. Numbers were still loading, still climbing. 100, 200, 500. "Grex," Vorn said quietly, "stop counting and give me a number." Grex looked up. "Sir, the sensors are showing over 1,000 ships." 1,000, Vorn repeated. Not a question, just the word, said slowly, like he needed to hear it out loud to believe it. "Yes, sir," Grex said. "And they are all the same design as the ship in front of us." Vorn looked back at the main screen. Commander Cole was still there, still watching, still calm, still patient, like a man who had already won and was simply waiting for the other side to understand it. On Vareth Prime, the War Council had seen the same sensor data. The room that had been loud and full of confident voices 20 minutes ago was now completely silent. General Drax, who had ordered the fleet forward with such certainty, was sitting very still. His large hands were flat on the table in front of him. He was staring at nothing. General Maka, who had laughed at the mention of humans just an hour ago, was not laughing now. Nobody was laughing. Dr. Seath sat in the corner of the room with his eyes closed. His expression was not one of surprise, it was something worse. It was the expression of a man who had expected this, who had perhaps feared it for a very long time. 1,000 ships, General Maka said at last. His voice was flat and strange. "How is that possible?" Nobody answered because nobody knew, or perhaps because the answer was too uncomfortable. The answer was 200 years. 200 years of working quietly. 200 years of building while no one was watching. 200 years of a species that the Empire had dismissed as primitive, deciding, very calmly, to become something else entirely. On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Cole was still waiting. He had not spoken again after his first message. He seemed in no hurry. That was perhaps the strangest part, one ship, surrounded by 42 Imperial warships with 1,000 more waiting behind it. And the man on the screen looked like he was waiting for a morning meeting to begin. Vorn walked back to his command chair and sat down slowly. He thought about his options. He could order his fleet to open fire, but on what? On one ship, while 1,000 more waited behind it. He could retreat, but retreating from one ship in front of the entire War Council was not something an Imperial admiral did. He could wait, and so he waited. After exactly 7 minutes of silence, Cole spoke again. "Admiral Vorn," he said, Vorn straightened in his chair. I know you're looking at our fleet, Cole continued. I know what your sensors are showing you. I am not here to frighten you. Though I understand if you are frightened. His voice was not mocking. It was honest, almost gentle. I am here to talk, Cole said. Just talk. Will you allow that? Vorn looked at the War Council screen. General Drax gave a very small nod. We will talk, Vorn said. Cole nodded once. Thank you. He reached off screen for a moment and then placed something on the desk in front of him. It was a small data device, old-looking, the kind that stored recordings. I want to show you something first, Cole said. Before anything else is said, I want to make sure we are all looking at the same truth. He pressed a button on the device. The screens on every Imperial ship changed. What appeared was a recording old. The image quality was not perfect. Slightly blurred at the edges, it showed space. And in that space, a small planet, green and blue, with white clouds beautiful and quiet, below the planet's surface. The recording showed small structures, homes, farms, roads made of dirt and stone, simple things, and people moving between them, humans, small and fragile looking, going about their daily lives. Children playing near buildings, adults working in fields, old people sitting outside in the sunlight. It looked peaceful, it looked happy. Then the recording changed. Imperial ships appeared in the sky above the planet, big ones, warships. The humans on the ground stopped what they were doing and looked up. Some of them ran, some of them just stood and stared. They had no weapons, no shields, no way to fight back. They were just people, living on their small planet at the edge of space. What happened next made the bridge of the Eternal Dominion go completely silent. The Imperial ships opened fire, not warning shots, not targeted strikes on military locations. Everything full power. The planet below lit up like it was on fire. The recording lasted 4 more minutes. 4 minutes of a small green and blue planet being destroyed from above by Imperial warships. When it ended, the screen was dark again and Cole was back, still calm. But his eyes were different now. Something in them was very old and very heavy. That was the colony of New Carthage, Cole said quietly. One of our first colonies outside our home system, 4,000. 211 people lived there. Farmers, doctors, teachers, children. The youngest person on that planet was 3 years old. He paused. Your empire destroyed that colony. 203 years ago, the official Imperial record called it a navigational error. Mistake, the wrong coordinates, he looked directly at the camera. There were no wrong coordinates, he said. Your ships were there for 11 hours before they fired. Our people tried to communicate with them. They were ignored, and then they were killed. Nobody on the Eternal Dominion moved. Vorn felt something he could not name sitting in his chest. Heavy and cold, he had served the Empire his whole life. He had believed in the Empire his whole life. He had never heard of New Carthage. He had never been told this story. In 60 years, no one had ever mentioned it. On Varath Prime, the War Council was very still. General Maka's face had gone a color that for his species meant deep shame. General Drax was looking at the table. Dr. Seath had opened his eyes. He was watching the screen with an expression that was tired and sad. Like someone watching a fire they had warned others about. A fire no one had believed would come, Cole continued. We found the recording 14 years after it happened. One of your survey ships had recorded the whole event, and the data was lost in a routine archive transfer. A human hacker found it by accident. When our government saw it, they wanted to go to war immediately. They were angry, as you can imagine. But our leaders at the time made a different decision. He looked down for a moment, then back up. They said, we are not ready. We are too small, too weak, too slow. If we go to war now, we lose everything. We lose our planet, our people, our future. So instead, they made a different choice. He paused. They decided to wait, and while they waited, they built. The word built hung in the air of the bridge like smoke. Vorn understood now. He understood what 200 years of quiet, focused, angry, determined building looked like. It looked like 1,000 warships sitting 2 light minutes behind a single scout vessel. It looked like technology that made Imperial sensors confused. It looked like a hull that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. It looked like a man sitting calmly in the middle of 42 enemy warships. Completely unafraid, for 200 years, Cole said. We told ourselves we were being patient, and we were, but we were also afraid. Afraid that when the time came we would not be enough. Afraid that we had waited too long, or not long enough. Afraid of what it would mean to finally come here and say what we needed to say. His voice was steady, but there was something real underneath it. Something human. We are not afraid anymore, he said. General Drax finally spoke from the War Council screen. His voice was controlled but tight. What do you want? Commander Cole. Cole looked at him. That is a good question, General. And I want to give you an honest answer. We do not want your empire. We do not want your planets or your resources or your territory. We are not here to conquer. He folded his hands on the desk in front of him. We want 3 things. First, a formal acknowledgement from the Empire that the destruction of New Carthage was not an accident. Second, reparations to be paid to the families and descendants of those who were killed. Third, a treaty between our 2 peoples, fair and equal, with no species considered above the other. He let that sit for a moment. That is all. 3 things. We are not asking for revenge. We are asking for truth. And fairness, Drax leaned forward. And if we refuse, Cole looked at him for a long moment. There was no anger in his face, no threat, just honesty. Then we will have a problem, Cole said simply. And I do not think either of us wants that. Vorn watched Cole's face carefully. He had faced many enemies in his life. Enemies who shouted and threatened. Enemies who begged. Enemies who tried to trick him. He had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy who spoke quietly and carried 1,000 warships behind them like a calm reminder. An enemy who did not seem to need to threaten, because the facts spoke for themselves. I need to consult with the War Council, Vorn said. Of course, Cole said. Take all the time you need. We have been waiting 200 years. A few more hours will not matter to us. Vorn cut the visual connection and turned to his crew. Everyone was looking at him, waiting. He could see it on their faces. The same questions he was asking himself. What do we do? What can we do? 42 ships against 1,000, and not just any ships. Ships that had crossed the galaxy 9 times faster than their best vessel. Ships built by a species that had spent 200 years doing nothing but preparing for this exact moment. He opened the private channel to Vareth Prime. The War Council was waiting, Admiral Vorn, General Maka said. Your assessment, Vorn took a breath. We cannot fight them, he said. The words cost him something, he could feel it. 60 years of pride and certainty leaving his body like air from a punctured ship. We do not know the full capabilities of their technology. We do not know if the ships behind their scout vessel are all they have. We do not know if there are more coming. What we do know is that one of their ships crossed the galaxy in a fraction of the time our fastest ship can manage. And they have 1,000 of those ships. To our 42, he paused. I recommend we talk. The room on Vareth Prime was quiet. General Drax, who had ordered the fleet forward with such confidence, said nothing. General Maka looked at his hands. It was Dr. Seath who spoke. I agree with Admiral Vorn, the old scientist said. And I will say something else. Everyone waited. Read Cole's demands again, Seath said. Truth, reparations, and a fair treaty. That is what a reasonable and restrained people asks for. Not conquest, not revenge, not domination. They want acknowledgement. They want to be seen. He looked around the room. We should be grateful, Seath said quietly, that after 200 years and 1,000 warships, that is still all they are asking for. Vorn reconnected to Cole's channel. Cole was sitting exactly as he had been. He had not moved. He had not shown any impatience. Commander Cole, Vorn said. Yes, Admiral. The War Council is prepared to open formal discussions. Cole nodded slowly. Good, he said. And for just a moment something shifted in his expression. Something that was not quite a smile but was close. Something that looked like relief. Like a man who had carried something very heavy for a very long time and had just been told he could set it down. I will send coordinates for a neutral meeting point, Cole said. Our ambassador will be there in 6 hours. He paused. Then he said something that surprised Vorn. Admiral, yes, I want you to know something. Cole looked directly at him. We never hated you. Not as a people. We were angry, yes, we were hurt. Yes, but we did not spend 200 years building an empire of hate. We spent 200 years building something strong enough that we would never have to be afraid again. There is a difference. Vorn looked at him for a long moment. I understand, Vorn said, and he meant it. The channel closed. Vorn sat in his chair and looked at the main screen. The USS Reckoning was still there, still dark, still quiet, still absorbing the light around it somewhere behind it. 1,000 more ships were waiting. Patient like their commander, like their people. Krex walked up beside Vorn quietly. "Admiral," he said. "What do you think will happen?" Vorn looked at the human ship for a long moment. "I think," he said slowly, "that we are about to learn what it feels like to be the smaller species in the room." He paused. "I think we should pay attention, because something tells me humans are very good teachers." 6 light hours away, on the bridge of the USS Reckoning, Commander Cole stood up from his chair. He walked to the window. The stars outside were the same stars he had looked at his whole life. The same stars his parents had pointed at when he was a child and told him, "Out there, somewhere, is the place that must answer for what it did." He put one hand flat against the cold glass. "We made it," he said quietly. Not to anyone in particular, just to the stars. Just to the 4,211 people who never got to see this day. Then he straightened his uniform, turned around and walked back to his chair. There was still a great deal of work to do. The meeting was supposed to happen in 6 hours. A neutral point in space, 2 sides, 1 table, and a chance to change everything, but the Empire could not wait. And that was their biggest mistake. General Drax did not sleep that night. He sat in his private office on Varath Prime and stared at the wall. The wall had maps on it, maps of every territory the Empire controlled. Thousands of planets, hundreds of systems, stretching across half the known galaxy. He had spent his whole life protecting those maps, growing them, adding to them. He had never once looked at them and felt afraid until tonight. The problem was not the human ships, not exactly. The problem was what the human ships meant. It meant that somewhere out there, a species the Empire had forgotten about had been watching, waiting, growing stronger in the dark, and nobody had known, nobody had seen it coming. If it had happened once, it could happen again. What other species were out there, quietly building, quietly waiting? What other mistakes had the Empire made that it had not yet been forced to face? Drax did not like these thoughts. He pushed them away and replaced them with something simpler, something he understood better: action. He opened a private channel to Admiral Vorn. Vorn appeared on screen looking tired. "He had clearly not slept either, Admiral," Drax said. "General," Vorn replied carefully. Something in Vorn's voice said he already knew this call was not going to be good. "I have been thinking about our situation," Drax said. "As have I," Vorn said. "The humans are expecting a meeting in 6 hours. Yes, they will come to that meeting feeling confident. They have 1,000 ships, and we have 42, they believe. They have already won," Vorn said. "Nothing, waiting." "What if we change that?" Drax said. Vorn was quiet for a long moment. "General, what are you suggesting?" Drax leaned forward. "I have already contacted the 2nd and 3rd Imperial fleets. Combined, they have 460 warships. They can be here in 3 hours before the meeting." Vorn stared at him. And then we remind the humans that 1,000 ships sounds impressive," Drax said, "until the other side has 460 of the most powerful warships ever built. We show them that the Empire is not afraid. We renegotiate from a position of strength, not weakness." Vorn looked at the general for a long time. He thought about Cole's face, that calm, patient face. He thought about the USS Reckoning sitting alone in the middle of 42 Imperial warships and not showing a single sign of fear. He thought about 1,000 ships waiting quietly behind it. "General," Vorn said slowly, "I do not think this is wise." "I did not ask for your opinion on wisdom," Drax said. "I am asking if your fleet is ready." Another long pause. "My fleet is always ready," Vorn said. "Good," Drax said, and closed the channel. 3 hours later, the 2nd and 3rd Imperial fleets arrived, 460 warships. Each one massive, powerful, bristling with weapons. They moved into position around the human fleet, or rather, around the one human ship that was visible, because the USS Reckoning was still the only human vessel close enough to see. The 1,000 ships behind it were still sitting 2 light minutes away, waiting on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. Vorn watched his screen. The combined fleet was an impressive sight. Even he had to admit that 460 Imperial warships in formation was something that had made entire civilizations surrender without a fight. But Cole's ship still hadn't moved, still hadn't reacted, still hadn't done anything at all. It just sat there, that small, dark, angular ship, surrounded now by 460 enemies instead of 42, and it looked exactly as calm as it had before. Drax opened a channel to Cole himself this time. Cole appeared on screen. He looked at Drax, then his eyes moved just slightly, to the sensor readouts visible at the edge of the frame. He had clearly already seen the new fleet. "General Drax," Cole said. "Commander Cole," Drax said, his voice firm and confident now. "I wanted to speak with you before our meeting." "Of course," Cole said. "I wanted you to see something first," Drax said. He sent Cole the sensor image of the combined Imperial fleet, 460 ships in perfect formation. Cole looked at it. He looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he looked back at Drax. "I see," Cole said. "We now have 460 warships surrounding your position," Drax said. "Yes," Cole said. "I wanted you to understand," Drax continued, "that the Empire negotiates as equals, not from a position of weakness. We are willing to talk, but we will not be pressured." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Drax had not expected. "General, can I ask you a question?" Drax paused, then nodded. "When you look at your 460 ships," Cole said, "what do you feel?" Drax frowned slightly. "Strength," he said. Cole nodded slowly. "I understand that feeling," he said. "I have felt it too." He paused. "Can I show you something?" Before Drax could answer, Cole reached off screen and pressed something. The sensor screens on every Imperial ship updated at the same time. Vorn saw it first because he was already watching his sensors closely. He stood up from his chair behind the USS Reckoning. The 1,000 human ships that had been sitting 2 light minutes away were moving, not toward the Imperial fleet. Not in an aggressive formation, they were simply moving closer, spreading out into a wide, calm circle around the entire Imperial fleet. All 460 ships, when they finished moving, the Imperial fleet was completely surrounded. Not outnumbered 2 to 1, not 3 to 1. The human ships had arranged themselves so that each Imperial warship had more than 2 human ships directly facing it. From every angle, in every direction, the bridge of the Eternal Dominion was absolutely silent. Not the silence of people thinking. The silence of people who had just understood something they could not unfeel. "Admiral," Grex said very quietly. "I know," Vorn said. He didn't need Grex to finish the sentence. He already knew what the numbers looked like. They were surrounded completely, perfectly, and the human ships had done it so smoothly, so quietly, so calmly, that it had taken less than 4 minutes. On the War Council screen, nobody was speaking. General Drax was staring at the sensor readout. His face was very still, the kind of still that comes not from calm but from a person who is working very hard, not to show what they are actually feeling. Cole's voice came through the channel again. "General Drax," he said. Drax looked at the screen. Cole's expression had not changed. Still calm, still patient, still that same face that seemed to carry 200 years of quiet waiting behind it. "I want you to know," Cole said, "that we did not come here to do this. We moved our ships because you moved yours. We are not trying to frighten you. We are simply making sure that when we sit down to talk, we are actually talking as equals." He paused. "As you said yourself, General." The words landed softly, but they landed hard. Drax's composure broke, not loudly, not with shouting, but Vorn could see it in his face through the screen. A small crack. The look of a man who had played a hand and had it played back at him perfectly. He turned away from the camera for a moment. When he turned back, his face was controlled again, but something behind his eyes was different now. "Stand by for the meeting," he said quietly and closed his channel. The meeting was supposed to be at a neutral point. A small unmanned space station that neither side owned. One shuttle from each side, small teams. But after the last hour, everyone understood that the word neutral had changed its meaning. There was no neutral anymore. There was one side that had come with 1,000 warships and perfect tactics, and one side that had made a move and had it answered before the move was even finished. Vorn prepared his shuttle. He had been asked to attend as the senior officer on site. He chose 3 crew members to accompany him. Grex was one of them. As they walked to the shuttle bay, Grex spoke quietly. "Admiral, do you think they will attack?" "No," Vorn said. "How can you be sure?" Vorn thought about it. "Because they haven't yet," he said. "They have had every opportunity. One ship surrounded by 42, then 460. If they wanted a fight, they would have started one already. They don't want a fight. They want what Cole said they want." He stepped into the shuttle. Truth, reparations, and fairness. Those are not the demands of a people who came here to destroy us. The shuttle crossed the distance to the neutral station in 20 minutes. When Vorn stepped inside, the human delegation was already there. Cole was standing near the table. He was taller than Vorn had expected, broad-shouldered, with that same dark uniform and the small symbol on his chest. Up close, Vorn could see that his face had lines in it. Not just age lines, the kind that come from carrying responsibility for a long time. Cole looked at Vorn and extended his hand. Vorn knew the human gesture. He had read about it in the old survey files. He reached out and shook it. Cole's grip was firm but not aggressive. "Admiral Vorn," Cole said. "Commander Cole," Vorn replied. They sat down. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Vorn would not remember every word that was said, but he would remember the feeling of it. The way Cole spoke, direct, clear, no extra words, no tricks. The human ambassador who accompanied Cole, a small older woman named Dr. Yara Solano, placed documents on the table one by one. Evidence of New Carthage, names of the dead, records of the Imperial ships that had been there, names of the commanders who had given the orders, all of it documented, verified, impossible to deny. At one point, Vorn asked a question that had been sitting in his mind since the beginning. "Commander Cole," he said, "you said your people decided not to fight 200 years ago because you were not ready." "Yes," Cole said. "How did you maintain that decision?" Vorn asked. "For 200 years. How did you keep an entire civilization focused on waiting?" "It must have been very difficult." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Vorn remembered for the rest of his life. "Every generation we told the story of New Carthage," Cole said. "Not as a story of hate, but as a story of what happens when a people is seen as less than what they are. We told our children, this happened because we were weak, and they were not afraid of us, and we told them, the answer is not to make them afraid. The answer is to become something that cannot be ignored, something that must be treated as an equal, because we deserve to be." He looked at Vorn. "That is what kept us going. Not anger, not hate, dignity." After the meeting ended and both sides had agreed to continue formal discussions, Vorn walked back to his shuttle. Cole walked with him to the door of the station. They stood there for a moment. Outside the small round window, space was full of ships. "Imperial ships and human ships side by side, Admiral," Cole said. "Yes, I want to ask you something personally." Vorn looked at him. "Do you think your empire will actually do what is right?" It was a direct question, the kind that deserved a direct answer. Vorn thought carefully. "I do not know," he said honestly. "The empire has many voices. Some of them will resist, some of them will argue and delay." Cole nodded like he had expected that answer. "We have patience," Cole said. "We have shown that, but Admiral, I want you to understand something." He looked out the window at the ships. "We did not come this far and build this much to be patient forever. We want peace, but we are fully prepared for the alternative." The words were quiet. There was no threat in his voice, just simple, honest truth. The kind that sits in a room long after the person who said it has left. Vorn nodded slowly. "I will make sure the right people hear that," he said. Cole looked at him, and for just a moment, something passed between them, not friendship, not yet, but something close to respect. The kind that can exist between two people on opposite sides of a very old wound. "Thank you, Admiral," Cole said. Vorn stepped into his shuttle, but back on Vareth Prime, not everyone felt the same way. General Drax had been watching the meeting through a secure feed. He had sat in silence through all 4 hours of it. Documents, names, dates, evidence. With each new piece, something had been building inside him, not guilt, not shame. Something harder and colder than that. Pride, wounded pride. The kind that cannot accept being outmaneuvered, cannot accept being surrounded, cannot accept sitting in a room watching an admiral shake hands with a human. When the feed ended, Drax stood up. He walked to his private communications terminal. He opened a channel not to the War Council, not to Admiral Vorn, but to a small group of commanders. Men and women who thought the way he did. Men and women who believed the Empire should never bow, never adjust, never admit. "The meeting is over," he said to them quietly. "But this is not." He looked at each of their faces on screen. "The humans have 1,000 ships in our space right now, Commander. Cole believes we are going to negotiate. He believes we are going to sign documents and pay reparations, and call it peace." His voice dropped very low. We are going to let him believe that, and then we are going to remind the galaxy what it means to threaten the Empire. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Vorn had just returned from the shuttle bay. He sat in his command chair and let out a long, slow breath. Grex approached him. "How was it, Admiral?" "Difficult," Vorn said. "And necessary," he paused. "Send a message to Varath Prime. Tell them we need full War Council approval of the discussion terms within 48 hours. "Yes, sir." Grex turned to go. Then Vorn said something else. "Grex, sir, keep watching all channels. Internal Imperial channels too." Grex looked at him. That was an unusual order. Watching internal channels meant watching their own people. "Is there something specific you are looking for?" Grex asked. Vorn looked at the main screen. The human ships were still out there. "Patient still waiting, stupidity," Vorn said quietly. "Sir, I am looking for stupidity," Vorn said, "because I have a feeling it is coming. And when it does, I want to know before it is too late to stop it." He was right, it was coming, and when it arrived, it would not be late at night. It would not give any warning. It would come fast and certain and confident, the way disasters always do. From the people who believe they cannot possibly be wrong. It started at 3 in the morning. Station time. When most of the galaxy was asleep. When the stars were at their quietest. When even the most alert sensor operator might blink just a little too slowly. General Drax had chosen the time carefully. He had chosen everything carefully, or so he believed. Vorn was asleep in his quarters when Grex woke him, not with a knock, with an alarm. The kind that only sounded when something was already happening. Vorn was out of his bed and moving before he was fully awake. His body knew what to do even when his mind was still catching up. He reached the bridge in 40 seconds. "Report," he said. Grex was already at his station, his face tight and pale. "Admiral, 6 Imperial warships from the 3rd Fleet have broken formation. They are moving toward the human fleet. Weapons hot." Vorn stopped. "Who authorized that?" "No one on record." "Sir, General Drax's private command code was used to release them from formation. But there is no official War Council order." Vorn looked at the screen. 6 Imperial ships, moving fast, heading directly toward the nearest human vessels. 6 ships against 1,000. He closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. "Get me Drax," he said. "He is not responding to channel requests, sir." Of course he was not. Vorn watched the 6 ships accelerate. He could stop them. He had the authority as senior admiral on site. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All Imperial vessels. This is Admiral Vorn. Hold your positions. Do not engage, I repeat. Do not engage." 5 of the 6 ships slowed. 1 did not. 1 kept going full speed. Weapons charging. The IWS Conqueror, commanded by a young captain named Reth who believed in Drax the way young soldiers believe in generals who tell them what they want to hear. Vorn opened a direct channel to the Conqueror, Captain Reth. "Stand down immediately." Reth's face appeared on screen. Young, determined, jaw set. "With respect, Admiral." "I have my orders." "Your orders are not authorized," Vorn said. "They came from General Drax. They did not come from the War Council. Stand down." "Captain?" Reth looked at him for a moment. Something moved across his face. Doubt, maybe, or the beginning of it. But he was moving too fast and had gone too far, and the doubt came just a little too late. "I cannot, Admiral," he said, and closed the channel. The IWS Conqueror opened fire. Everything it had. Missiles, energy beams, plasma cannons, the full weapons array of one of the Empire's finest warships. All of it directed at the nearest human ship. The nearest human ship was 3 times the size of the Conqueror. Dark hull, angular shape, completely still. The weapons hit it. All of them, direct hits, every single one. The explosion of light and energy was enormous. For just a moment, it was impossible to see anything through the light. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, everyone held their breath. The light faded, the sensors cleared. Vorn looked at the screen. The human ship was still there. Not damaged, not moving, not reacting. It looked exactly the same as it had before, as if nothing had happened. As if the full weapons fire of an Imperial warship had been nothing more than a light rain on a summer afternoon. Nobody on the bridge spoke. The IWS Conqueror had stopped moving. Even Captain Reth, it seemed, had not expected that. The silence on every Imperial channel was total. Then Cole's voice came through, calm as always, steady as always. But with something underneath it now, something that had not been there before. Not anger, something colder than anger. Something more certain, Admiral Vorn, Cole said. Commander Cole, Vorn said immediately. That action was unauthorized. I want you to know. I know, Cole said quietly. I know it was unauthorized. I know who gave the order and why. I know everything that happened in the last 6 hours on your side. He paused. And that pause was heavy. We have been listening to your communications for the past 18 hours. All of them. Another pause. We know about General Drax. We know about his private group. We know what he was planning. We chose to let it happen. Vorn stared at the screen. You chose to let it happen? Yes, why Cole looked at him directly. Because we needed the Empire to see something, he said. We needed every ship out there, every commander, every sensor operator, every person watching from Varath Prime to see one thing with their own eyes. Not hear about it. Not read a report. See it. He let that sit for a moment. Now they have seen it, and they had. Every Imperial ship in the region had watched the full weapons fire of the IWS Conqueror hit a human vessel and do nothing. Not scratch it, not dent it, not even make it move. The Conqueror was now sitting completely still in space. Its weapons were empty, its crew was silent, and the human ship it had fired on was already turning away, slowly, calmly, like a large animal that had felt a small insect land on it, and had simply decided it was not worth its attention. On Varath Prime, the War Council chamber was very quiet. General Drax was standing in the middle of the room. 2 Imperial security officers were standing on either side of him. Someone had finally traced the unauthorized command codes. It had not taken long. General Maka looked at Drax across the table. You have placed the entire Empire in danger, Maka said. His voice was not loud. That was worse somehow when Maka shouted. It meant he was frustrated when he was quiet. It meant something was already decided. I was protecting the Empire, Drax said. You were protecting your pride, Maka said. There is a difference. Drax opened his mouth and closed it. He looked at the screen showing the sensor feed from Vorn's flagship. 1,000 human ships, completely surrounding 460 Imperial warships. The IWS Conqueror sitting alone with empty weapons and nowhere to go. And the human ship it had fired on, already back in formation. Not even a mark on its hull. Drax looked at all of this. And for the first time in his long career, he had absolutely nothing to say. Cole opened a channel to the full Imperial fleet. Every ship received it at the same time. Every screen showed his face. He did not look triumphant, he did not look angry. He looked like a man delivering a message he had prepared a long time ago and hoped he would never have to give. People of the Galactic Empire, he said. What you just saw was not a demonstration that we planned. It was a demonstration that your own people created for us when we did not fire a single weapon. We did not threaten a single life. We simply absorbed what was given to us and remained standing. He looked directly at the camera. We are not your enemy. We have never wanted to be your enemy. But we are also not weak. We are not small. We are not the primitive species someone decided to destroy 200 years. I go on a planet called New Carthage, he paused. We are humans, and we are here, and we are not leaving until this is resolved fairly. The message ended. On every Imperial ship, in every room, on every deck, the crew members looked at each other. Nobody had orders, nobody knew what to say, so they said nothing and waited. It was Dr. Seath who moved first on Varath Prime. The old scientist stood up slowly from his chair. Everyone looked at him. He walked to the communications terminal in the corner of the room. He opened a channel directly to Cole. Cole appeared on screen. He looked at Seath. Something in his expression softened slightly, the way it does when you recognize something you were not expecting. Commander Cole, Seath said. Dr. Seath, Cole replied. Seath paused. I was on the original survey team, he said. The one that visited your system 200 years ago. A long silence. I know, Cole said. You wrote a report, Seath said. It said your people had great potential. It said you were creative, resilient, and determined. It said you deserved to be watched carefully. Cole looked at him. I read that report, Cole said. Every human child reads it in school. Seath nodded slowly. I never imagined, he said quietly, that this is what watching carefully would look like. For just a moment, something crossed Cole's face. Not quite a smile, but something warm. Neither did we, he said. The formal process began 6 hours later. Not a meeting this time, a full session, the War Council. The human delegation, Admiral Vorn, Dr. Seath, and a team of Imperial lawyers and record keepers. They met on a larger station, one that had enough room for both sides to breathe. The first document was the hardest. The official acknowledgement, it said in plain, clear language, that the destruction of the colony of New Carthage was not an accident, that it was carried out by Imperial warships under Imperial orders, that those orders were wrong, that the Empire accepted responsibility. Every member of the War Council had to sign it. Some signed quickly, some slowly. General Makas signed it without hesitation. He pressed his mark to the document and looked up at Cole. "I am sorry," he said. Just those 3 words, simple and direct. Cole looked at him for a moment. "Thank you," he said, and he meant it. The reparations document came next, resources, territory rights, and a formal fund for the descendants of New Carthage. The numbers were large. The Empire had not become powerful by being generous, but the Empire also had 460 ships surrounded by 1,000, and an empty weapons conqueror floating somewhere nearby as a very clear reminder. They signed, the treaty was last. It was the longest document, 22 pages. It covered trade, territory, rights of passage, diplomatic representation, and one paragraph that Cole had written himself. Vorn read that paragraph carefully. It said, "No species within this treaty shall be considered lesser than any other. No species shall be ignored, dismissed, or erased. All peoples, regardless of their level of development, shall be treated with dignity and given the right to grow in safety." Vorn read it twice. Then he looked at Cole. "You wrote this for more than just humans," he said. Cole nodded. "New Carthage was not the first time the Empire did something like this," he said quietly. "We know that. We just happened to be the ones who came back." He looked at Vorn. "Maybe the treaty can make sure no one else has to." Vorn looked at the paragraph again. Then he picked up the marking tool and signed his name as witness. News travels fast when the galaxy is watching, and the galaxy had been watching. Every species with a long-range sensor had been monitoring the situation from the moment the unknown ship appeared. They had watched one ship face 42. They had watched 1,000 appear from nowhere. They had watched the full weapons fire of an Imperial warship do nothing to a human vessel. And now they were watching the Galactic Empire sign a treaty. The reactions came quickly, from every corner of known space. A small reptilian species called the Veth, who had been paying tribute to the Empire for 60 years, sent a message to their Imperial governor the next morning. It said simply, "We would like to renegotiate our arrangement. The Palin Confederation, a group of 7 worlds that had been waiting for years to push back against Imperial trade restrictions, formally requested independent arbitration under the new treaty terms." 3 other species sent messages directly to the human delegation. Not to the Empire, to the humans. The messages all said variations of the same thing. "We would like to talk." Cole read each message carefully. He was sitting in his cabin on the USS Reckoning when his communications officer brought them in. He read them one by one. Then he set them down and looked out the window for a long time. He had not expected this, or perhaps he had. Somewhere in the back of his mind, in the part that had planned for every possibility during 200 years of waiting, perhaps some part of humanity had always known that what they did here would be about more than just themselves. Admiral Vorn requested a final private meeting with Cole before the human fleet began to withdraw. They met in the small observation room of the neutral station. Just the 2 of them, no aides, no security, no recording devices. 2 old soldiers from opposite sides of a very long story. They sat down for a moment. Neither of them spoke. Just looked at the stars through the wide observation window. It was Vorn who broke the silence. "How does it feel?" he said. Cole looked at him. "I am not sure yet," Cole said honestly. "I thought I would feel something bigger, something like victory." He paused. "But it does not feel like victory." "What does it feel like?" Vorn asked. Cole thought about it. "It feels like the end of a very long wait," he said. "And the beginning of something I am not sure we are fully ready for." Vorn looked at him. "What do you mean?" "For 200 years we had a purpose," Cole said. "Every human being alive knew what we were working toward. Now we are here. We did what we came to do. And now we have to figure out what comes next." He looked at the stars. "That is harder than I expected." Vorn was quiet for a moment. Then he said something he had been thinking since the first night he saw the USS Reckoning on his screen. "Commander Cole, Yes, when your people were building for 200 years, when they were working in the dark, with no guarantee it would ever be enough, bug. What kept them going? Not the official answer, the real one. Cole was quiet for a long time. The stars outside were very still. Hope, Cole said finally. The belief that being right about something matters. Even when the universe does not immediately agree with you. He turned to look at Vorn. We were right that we deserved to exist. We were right that what happened to New Carthage was wrong. We held on to that, and we built everything else around it. Vorn nodded slowly. I think, he said carefully, that my people have some things to learn from yours. Cole looked at him. I think, Cole said. That might be the most important thing anyone from your empire has said to me. The human fleet began to withdraw the next morning. One by one, the dark angular ships turned and moved away, smooth and silent the way they had arrived, leaving no trail, no heat, no signature, just space where they had been. Vorn stood on his bridge and watched them go. It took a long time. 1,000 ships do not disappear quickly. But eventually the last one faded from the sensors, and the space around the Imperial fleet was open again, empty and quiet, the way it had been before, except that everything was different now. 3 weeks later, on a small planet far from the center of the galaxy, a young alien boy was sitting with his father. They were watching a news broadcast about the new treaty, about humans, about New Carthage, about 1,000 warships that had come from nowhere and changed everything without firing a single shot. The boy watched with wide eyes. When the broadcast ended, he looked at his father. Are humans dangerous? He asked. His father was quiet for a moment. He thought about everything he had seen in the last 3 weeks. He thought about one ship facing 42. He thought about a recording 200 years old, and the names of 4,000 people. He thought about a treaty signed by the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Only if you make them have to be, his father said quietly. The boy thought about this. And if you treat them right, his father looked at him. Then I think, he said, they are exactly the kind of people you want in your corner. And from that day forward, no species in the galaxy ever made the mistake of forgetting about humans again. Not because humans were the most powerful, not because they had the most ships, not because they were the fastest or the strongest, but because the galaxy had learned something that the Empire had forgotten to consider 200 years ago. When you dismiss a people and leave them alone long enough, when you give them enough time and enough reason, they do not disappear, they do not forget, they do not give up. They build quietly, patiently, and with everything they have, until the day they are finally ready, and on that day they come back, not with hate, but with 1,000 ships and the truth, and that, it turned out, was more than enough.